when a liberal journalist attempts to embarrass Barron Trump's godfather, the legendary Clint Eastwood. During a tense interview, Barron steps in with a response so powerful it leaves everyone speechless. Watch as this electrifying exchange unfolds, shocking everyone in the room. The air was thick with tension, the bright studio lights casting a sharp glow over the polished oak table. Clint Eastwood, a man whose very name defined Hollywood for generations, sat with an unshakable presence. His weathered face remained unreadable. Across from him sat Claire Daniels, a sharp, ambitious journalist known for exposing scandals and stoking controversy. She hadn't come for a casual discussion. She was here to make waves. Standing just behind Clint, silent yet impossible to ignore, was Barron Trump. At 19, he towered over most, his piercing blue eyes scanning the room with a wisdom far beyond his years. His father, now the 47th President of the United States, had given Clint an unspoken yet vital role, a mentor to his youngest son. The interview launched with sharp, cutting questions, each one carefully crafted to provoke. Claire leaned in, her tone edged with challenge. "Mr. Eastwood, some say you're outdated, irrelevant. Why hold on to a spotlight that no longer shines for you?" Clint's eyes darkened ever so slightly, but before he could respond, Barron spoke up, his tone calm, his words deliberate. "Sometimes, the brightest lights are the ones people fail to notice. Be careful not to overlook them." Claire hadn't expected Barron to jump in. Her pen hesitated midair. For the first time, she faltered. "I wasn't aware you were part of this conversation, Barron," she said, trying to maintain control. "I'm not," Barron replied smoothly. "But when someone disrespects a man who has stood the test of time, staying silent isn't an option." Clint placed a steady hand on Barron's shoulder, silently acknowledging his words. "The boy's got a point," Clint said, his gravelly voice cutting through the tension. "Let's focus on the real story here, not just a flashy headline." Barron nodded. "Exactly." But Claire wasn't about to let this moment slip. "You speak about respect, Barron, yet your father's presidency has been one of the most divisive in history. What gives you the authority to speak on legacy and integrity?" Barron's jaw tightened, but his composure never wavered. "I speak because I've lived it," he responded without hesitation. "And because I've learned from men like Clint, men who earned their place in history not by tearing others down, but by standing firm in their truth." Claire leaned back, watching him closely. The young Trump wasn't just echoing his father, he was something else entirely. As the interview pressed on, Claire shifted her strategy, determined to uncover what she believed were hidden vulnerabilities. "Mr. Eastwood, some whisper that you've used your influence to shield the Trump family. Any comment?" Clint's expression didn't change, but his voice carried weight. "Rumors are like shadows, harmless until you give them weight. I don't entertain gossip, ma'am." But Claire wasn't finished. "And Barron, what about you? Living under your father's presidency must be overwhelming. How do you handle always being seen as just Donald Trump's son?" A heavy silence filled the room. For the first time, a crack appeared in Barron's mask of composure. His voice, still steady but laced with raw emotion, broke through the tense air. "I'm more than just my last name," he said. "People like Clint have shown me that a legacy isn't something you inherit, it's something you earn. You want a headline? Write this down. Respect isn't given. It's proven." The atmosphere shifted. Barron's words settled in the air like a brewing storm. Claire's hand trembled slightly as she jotted notes. The ticking clock on the wall seemed louder than before. Something had changed in the room, and everyone felt it. Then, the interview took a sharper turn. Claire, driven by the need for a career-defining moment, leaned forward, her voice cutting, unrelenting. "Clint, some call you the guardian of a highly controversial family. Do you wear that title with pride, or does it feel like a burden?" Clint's face remained impassive, but for a fleeting second, something flickered in his eyes, a deep, buried pain. Before he could answer, Barron's voice sliced through the silence. "Is it really controversial to stand by those you care about? Or is it just easier to attack what you don't understand?" Claire arched an eyebrow. "So, You admit there's controversy, Barron? He didn't hesitate. The controversy isn't in the truth. It's in how people distort it. Clint's loyalty isn't a burden. It's proof of his integrity. The room's tension thickened. Even the security personnel near the doors shifted uneasily. For the first time, Claire seemed unsure. The young man before her wasn't just defending Clint. He was dismantling every trap she'd set. But Claire wasn't done. She was only getting started. She reached into her bag, pulling out a worn file, its edges frayed from years of handling. "Mr. Eastwood," she began, her voice icy, "there are whispers of an incident from your past, a choice that may have put lives at risk. Care to comment?" Clint's jaw clenched. Silence fell, thick with anticipation. Barron's eyes flicked toward Clint, seeing, for the first time, his usually unshakable godfather caught in a rare moment of vulnerability. "That's enough," Barron said, his voice low but commanding. Claire smirked. "What's wrong, Barron? Afraid the truth might shatter your perfect image of him." Barron stood, his towering frame casting a long shadow over the table. "The truth doesn't intimidate me," he said coldly. "But your obsession with tearing people down does. You want a story? Here's one. Clint Eastwood saved my life. Twice." Silence. Claire blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "He saved your life," she echoed, skepticism clear in her tone. "Yes," Barron said, his voice thick with emotion. "But that doesn't matter to you, does it? You'd rather reopen old wounds than acknowledge the man who's been my rock in a world that's anything but stable." For a brief moment, Claire was speechless. "What do you mean Clint saved your life?" she finally asked, her voice quieter now, less certain. Barron's gaze hardened, but beneath it, a flicker of pain surfaced. "When my father was on the campaign trail, there was a real threat against me. Clint was the one who stepped up. He protected me when no one else could." Claire's pen hovered over her notepad, fingers trembling slightly. "Why has no one heard this before?" "Because Clint doesn't do things for attention," Barron replied. "He doesn't need the world's recognition. He just does what's right." For the first time, Clint, who had remained silent, spoke up. "I'm no hero, kid," he said, his voice low but firm. "I did what anyone with the right experience would do." Barron shook his head. "Not anyone. Only someone like you." The weight of his words filled the room, and for the first time, Claire seemed to truly grasp the depth of the man sitting across from her. Claire quietly closed her notebook, exhaling as if releasing the weight of her own expectations. She had come searching for flaws, something that could challenge a legacy, shake its foundation. But instead, she had uncovered something entirely unexpected, a bond that couldn't be broken, a story that deserved to be told. As the cameras powered down, an overwhelming silence settled over the room. Claire rose from her seat, extending a hand toward Clint. "Thank you," she said softly, "for showing me what true strength really looks like." Barron and Clint exchanged a knowing glance. Their connection remained unshaken. They had weathered the storm, and soon, the world would see the truth. As the interview wrapped up, Claire lingered behind, unable to shake the weight of what she had just uncovered. The bond between Clint and Barron had not only defied her expectations, it had profoundly moved her. That evening, Barron sat in the private quarters of the White House, his security detail stationed just outside the doors. Clint joined him, his presence offering quiet reassurance. The night felt heavier than most, the conversation from earlier still lingering in the air. "Do you ever regret stepping into my life?" Barron asked suddenly, his voice thick with emotion. Clint's gaze softened. "Not for a second," he replied. "You needed someone, and I needed purpose. Life has a strange way of bringing people together at just the right moment." Barron hesitated, then reached into his pocket, pulling out an old photograph. It was a candid shot, Clint shielding him during that fateful rally years ago. "I carry this with me," Barron admitted. "It reminds me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act despite it." Clint rested a hand on Barron's shoulder. "And you've got plenty of courage, kid," he said. "More than most men I've ever met." Just outside the door, unseen, Claire watched in silence, her heart conflicted. The story she had set out to tell had transformed into something far deeper than she had ever anticipated. The following day, Claire approached Barron's security team with an unusual request. "I need one more interview," she said. "But this time, it's not for a headline, it's for them." When Barron heard of her request, he hesitated. "Why?" Claire met his gaze with quiet determination. "Because the world deserves to know the truth. Not just about Clint, but about you. About everything you've both endured and overcome." A long silence stretched between them before Barron finally gave a slow nod.
"All right."
But no scripts. No rehearsed questions. Just honesty. The interview was set in the East Wing, with Clint seated beside Barron. As the cameras rolled, Claire turned to face them and spoke with a sincerity she hadn't expected to feel. "Sometimes, we enter a story believing we already understand the narrative," she said. "But the truth is often far more powerful than we ever imagined." As Clint and Barron shared their personal journeys, the atmosphere in the room grew heavier, more emotional. Clint spoke of sacrifice, of the toll his choices had taken on his life, and of the immense pride he felt watching Barron grow into a man of character and honor. By the time the interview concluded, there wasn't a single dry eye in the room. Even Barron's usually stoic security team appeared visibly moved. That evening, the interview aired. The response was immediate. Social media erupted with admiration for Clint's courage and Barron's humility. People from all walks of life shared their own stories, deeply touched by the powerful connection between the two men. Barron's phone buzzed constantly with messages of encouragement. He glanced at the overwhelming flood of notifications, then looked over at Clint. "I wasn't expecting this," he admitted. Clint chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "People recognize honesty, Barron," he said. And that's what they saw. Two people being real. Meanwhile, the world watched, listened, and, for the first time in a long time, understood.